Difficult. Women.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Long time no see.
I know.
That's sort of a joke because I was just in Nashville like a day ago.
She was just here in my bed.
I was. Exactly. BTW, I'm Katy.
BTW, I'm Marie. And this is the Difficult Women podcast. And we have been very, we should be calling it just Busy Women podcast. My God, Last week, Katy came down here from Brooklyn to Nashville. And we tracked our vocals and our instruments for our third album. It was amazing. I'm just so proud of us. I'm so proud.
We pulled it off somehow. We hadn't been rehearsing at all because we haven't seen each other in so long, but it worked out. It worked out great.
It did.
I'm looking forward to hearing the whole album intact. We will see when that'll be.
Yeah, that's right.
Be a minute, but it's good.
And I do want to give a little shout out to our producer, Dana Cadora. You guys check out Dana Cadora's music on Spotify. She's just such a wonderful human being and one of the most talented people we know. And we are so lucky to work with her on this album. But she's a musician here in town, and her music, oh my God, it's so good.
It's so beautiful. It's definitely worth a listen on Spotify. Check her out. Dana Cadora.
That's right. Please. And then just stay tuned for our album. You know, we're going to get other musicians to play on it. And it's going to be so good. So stay tuned. And you can find out more information and behind the scenes stuff if you join our Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/reformedwhores, we're going to be posting some a little early listening things and some videos from our recording session in a very hot room. It was very hot. But it was awesome. Anyway, it was so fun to have you here, Katy.
Oh, it's as a pleasure for me as well, always.
Fabulous. How are you doing? What's new now that you're back?
I just got back like a day ago. My most exciting thing is I'm trying to organize my office space. Everyone's like, what have you been up to? I'm like, organizing my office space.
Wow, that's nice.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get serious now. All these years have just been messing around. Now I'm gonna sit at a desk. It's gonna be great. Getting serious.
Do you have a pen holder?
Ooh. Right here, baby.
Holy moly, that's a lot of pens.
It's full of like candy and like a pinwheel. I don't know. I gotta work through it. That's why I have to organize.
Oh, that's so fun. Well, I want to say,
what about you?
I went to another concert.
Look at you.
It just oh my God, so much fun. And very ironic because it was at the Brooklyn Bowl, Nashville.
Right.
Which they have like a lot of the same signage and like those, when you bowl, they have those like weird puppet looking things. Those things were there. And so I felt like I was in Brooklyn. They have the same blue ribbon, fried chicken and stuff.
Good.
So.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering the most.
Oh, so good. Yeah, it was really fun. And we just danced our asses off. So it feels like, it was awesome. Support live music, folks.
Yeah.
It's good. So welcome, guys. This is part 3 of the circumcision.
Yeah, right. We've just decided this is a circumcision podcast.
No, don't turn it off. It's not.
Just kidding.
We're just kidding. But
we are still getting lots of messages.
Oh, it's fascinating.
I gotta say though, it's crazy to me how like people get so mad and be like, how dare you like even suggest that getting circumcised is even remotely okay. And then in the same day, we'll get someone saying like, I just got circumcised at 23 and I'm so happy I did. So I'm like, this is why we ended up where we did on our pod. But
that's
the thing. I'm sorry, guys, but that's just it. I don't know. I don't got a dick. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry, not sorry.
I mean, if you have some free time, go over to our YouTube page at Reformed Whores and just check out the comments. This one guy wrote a novel. That one guy, wow. I'm so impressed that you have the time to sit and write for hours. Good job.
But seriously, are we going to make more money if this becomes a circumcision podcast where we just evoke anger in people? I mean, maybe we'll be rich finally. I don't know.
No,
Let us know. Send us an email.
We want to focus on the female experience. You know why? Because we are female and that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah. And that's what we know.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, speaking of the female experience, we're going to talk about something we don't know about today. Again. That's really what this is about. I was talking about something we know nothing about. But we got an email from a listener who recommended that we discuss. Well, let's read what he said here.
Sure.
He said, suggestion about doing a podcast episode. He said, divorce. Below is a rant I posted on Facebook on the inaccuracy of the half of marriages end in divorce statistic, but still about a third of marriages do, which is a lot. People have a lot of theories. Better to get married when you're past 30? Nope, no evidence that helps. Second marriages are more successful? Again, nothing to back it up. Men who have sown their wild oats are likely to become more faithful? Again, nothing to back it up. The bottom line is there's no way to tell if a marriage will succeed or fail, and does a long marriage equal success and a divorce equal failure? I don't think so. People need change. Their needs change. So that sort of piqued our interest because, I don't know, I think I sort of rolled along with this statistic that about 50% of marriages end in divorce. I didn't really think much about it. Did you think that was true, or did you think that was not true?
No, it felt right.
Yeah.
But then when you really stop and think, are 50% of your friends divorced?
I mean, they're not at the end of their life yet, so I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's the thing.
Right,
it is, and
that's true.
So it did definitely I mean, I know people that should be divorced. So you don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I think that's it kind of piqued our interest, this idea of what is this actual divorce rate and why is it so convoluted? Mm-hmm. And as I dug into this a little bit more, first of all, all the numbers are all over the place.
Right.
If you look at different, it is legitimately I don't understand what's going on with these numbers. The best article I could find was written by Fatherly. And there's an article on fatherly.com that was written just a month ago. And it's called, What is the Divorce Rate in America? And basically that it's complicated. And I think that this is what our reader was referencing. But the way that they've been doing the divorce rates is that they just take the amount of marriages that happen in a year. Mm-hmm. And then they take the amount of divorces that happen in the year. And then that's the rate.
Right.
But that's a really dumb way of doing it.
Right. Because the people who are getting married that year aren't the ones getting divorced.
Not necessarily. They could. They could. That rate could be true, but we just you can't actually. And the way that they explained it in this article, which I thought was well said, was let's say you were diagnosed with lung cancer, and you're trying to figure out what your chance of dying from lung cancer was. They were saying if you just take everybody that gets lung cancer and then dies of lung cancer in that same year and then use that as the rate, if 100 people get lung cancer and 100 people die,
right,
it's that's 100% rate that you're going to die, but that's not necessarily reflecting. Some of those people might be really old and have had it for 30 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's a similar thing with the divorce rate, because we're not married, and apparently they just do not have any or I don't know if they have ability or not, but they haven't been tracking marriages one by one. So if Jill and Frank get married, we don't track them. They get tracked as the people that get married, but they don't get tracked. Who knows when they get tracked as the divorced couple? Does that make sense? I'm making it more confusing.
No, it makes sense. And to add to not understanding the numbers or gaining the proper data, there's several states that have just stopped sending in their divorce rates.
Right.
So they're only since the 2000. So for 21 years, it was California, I can't remember the list. So don't come at me, guys. But I just think that's fascinating. If we're just going to stick to this 50% statistic of divorce rate, but we're not even measuring the data in the last 20 years, then it is all bogus.
And what's crazy about it is that it's people get worked up about this. When I tried to find some stuff on YouTube about what's the divorce rate, every video that pops up is people freaking out about how divorce is going up in America, which it's not.
It's not. It's actually,
at all.
Well, some articles even say it's declining.
Yeah, I think there's no evidence that it's going up. I think that they're either saying it's the same as it's ever been or it's declining. But I don't think there's any, but people just feel like it's going up. So then they hear that statistic and they freak out. And so many videos on YouTube of people being like, America's falling apart and our divorce rates are out of the control, when that's just not the case. And I think especially for like religious reasons, that's fodder for people to freak out about family values and all these things. So it kind of like, on the one hand, I'm like, who cares what the rate is? But on the other hand, some people really do. And it can kind of affect a lot of people's lives. So if that number's wrong, that's kind of something to be aware of.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting kind of looking back through history and how divorce it's an ebb and flow. So like in the 19th and 20th centuries, people were married to gain property and move their way through, social classes. So their divorce rate was pretty low, which I think, because your dad is in the back being like, if you don't make this work, we're going to kill you,
Or that like you may not even be able to survive.
Right. So in 1867, this is some statistic that I'm pulling out on insider.com, trying to state our sources, since some of the trolls were saying, you idiots just read shit off the internet, which is our podcast.
It's exactly what we do. And we've always said that.
Yep. Just reading something just talking about something I read on the internet. So that's insider.com. It said in 1867, there were 10,000 divorces. And this is in America. In 1867, there were 10,000 divorces. And by 1879, there were 17,000 that year. So, but the rate still stayed pretty low at 0.3 divorces per 1,000 Americans. And then through history, it kind of steadily increased. But then, of course, like when we hit World War I, women were entering the workforce and earning, their own money and discovering independence and freedom. And so all of a sudden, the divorce rate did climb, which surprise, surprise. And then again, in the 20s, it was climbing. And then the 50s, of course, what happened? Family values and like the shoving it down your throat of like, you have to have a house and the American dream and the children. And so I guess divorce rates kind of petered out a little bit. Still, people were getting divorced because they didn't want to do that. Women didn't want to make dinner for their husbands. But then I thought this was interesting. In the 70s, 3.5 per 1,000. But by the end of the decade, it reached 5.1 divorces per 1,000 Americans. And it was because it was like hippies and free love, and like they didn't want to be tied to one person. They wanted to just, share and have orgies.
One thing I also read was that, because that was people were really pushing that idea, and that probably there is something that plays into that, I'm sure. But the other thing that happened around that time in the 70s and moving into the 80s is that states started allowing no-fault divorce. And that's why all of a sudden the rates went skyrocketing, because you could get divorced and you didn't have to be because, I'm getting beaten by my husband or something. It could be because like, look, we just don't get along anymore.
Right.
So all these people that had been wanting to get divorced, it doesn't mean that people now are like, oh yes, divorce. It just was the people that had been kind of waiting to find a reason to get divorced for years and years and years finally had a reason. So that's why there was like a flood of them all of a sudden. But then what's interesting is the divorce rates went right back to where they had been, more or less. The other thing that's interesting about this, like this measurement of the like 0.3 or 3.2 per 1,000, it's not per 1,000 married couples. It's per 1,000 people. So it's also such a bad way to it's like lumping single and married people together. It's a very and they call it a crude system because it's not very good way to measure rates either. Because we're not comparing married to unmarried. We're just comparing like everybody in America or in any country. Right. And I was looking at rates, like they do that for all the countries. So like America's like 2.5 or something per 1,000 people. Sweden is like 3 point something. So their rate of divorce is higher. in this fatherly article, this is why it's like, they talk about how the rate in the United States is 14.9 divorces per 1,000 marriages, which is a different rate reading than what they use kind of generally. Anyway, that's why these numbers are confusing.
Well, so I did find, California, Georgia, Hawaii, Louisiana, and Minnesota have stopped reporting their divorce rates.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, like, so then how are we going to know?
Yeah.
Also interesting, did you know that the West Coast was like the early, I think because you were about to say Ronald Reagan was the one that, when he was a governor, was the first to pass the no-fault divorce rate, because he had already been divorced a couple of times, so I'm sure he was like, you know what, let's just get this through. You should just be able to be like, look, we don't want to be married anymore.
Right.
That should be like enough of a reason. Guess who the last state was that passed the no-fault divorce?
Who?
New York.
Oh.
In 2010.
Oh, no.
That's crazy, right? So people had to like find like, I don't know what reasons. I don't really understand. That was the other thing. I was like, how does divorce work?
Right.
Because when you Google it, they're like, get divorced online. But still, you have to, and I guess it differs from state to state, but you do have to like have a period of, they call it the cool off period.
Right.
Where like you have to wait between 60 days to 90 days to sometimes it's 6 months. I mean, it just depends, I think, from state to state. Before you can, from when you file to when you can actually get divorced.
Well, in the state of Hawaii, anyone can go and get a divorce there, no matter where you were married in the country. You can go to Hawaii.
Is it like an immediate divorce?
I guess so. There's no.
Honestly, I kind of feel like that's the way to do it. Because I mean, why is the state going to tell me what I should be able to do?
Right.
In my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let's say you're, certainly if you're in like a dangerous situation, that complicates things. Even if you're not in a dangerous situation, but you're extremely unhappy, just to like drag that thing out, that seems like a nightmare. Which to me is an ad for not getting married, which is the opposite of what these like divorce people are freaking out about, the divorce rate people. Because I think, oh, no family values. But it's like, well, you know, if you make it hard to get divorced, then makes me want to get married less.
Well, some states
not
make
that I'm
you
planning on getting divorced, but you know, you never know what can happen.
I love that there's an option, though. You know, I mean,
you gotta have it.
You gotta have that, because people do change, and that's what I like. Jokingly always say this, but whenever I do, if I ever do get married, in our vows, I want to like really say, you know, I want my witnesses there to like help us through the good times and the bad, but also, if you know we give it our all, it's okay if we get divorced. Like, just say it in the vows, say it in front of all of our friends and family, because there shouldn't be any shame. And especially these marriages that last like 20, 30 years and then they get divorced, it's not a failure. I think it's a beautiful thing.
That is the thing too about these statistics, is like, even from country to country, when they say like, okay, the divorce rates in like Iran are very, very low.
Right.
But their laws are different and their rules are different. And even the reasons why people get married are different than they are in like Sweden, where Sweden's like extremely, you know, apparently people get married at high rates in Sweden and they get divorced in high rates in Sweden because they're very not religious people there. So they're getting married for different reasons than in, you know, Iran or wherever. Right. So I think that like this idea that we're lumping marriage together as one concept and divorce together, it's like that's sort of confusing in its own right, because like people get married for religious reasons, people get married for financial reasons, people get married just because they want to get married. People, you know what I mean? Like it's not this one size fits all institution.
In Illinois, a person can file for divorce if a spouse gives them a sexually transmitted disease.
Good. Get the fuck out of here.
Could you imagine? That's
well,
insane.
especially because, I mean.
Oh, also if they're impotent.
Oh. I mean, I guess like that makes me sad for people. But
that makes me really sad. But I mean, and it's.
But I guess it sort of acknowledges that like sex is an important part of some people's, you know, marriages.
Oh God! But what? That's like heartbreaking for that.
Yeah. Well, that forget the better for better or worse on that one, I guess, because it's not really. Yeah. One thing that's sort of interesting, and our friend who wrote in the letter or the email sort of touched on is like, does it matter if you're a millennial or like do those marriage rates, are those different from the boomers and stuff? And they were saying, well, this is something I did find, I think it is true. The boomer rates of divorce are extremely high compared to other generations and like still alive now, because the boomers were getting married at higher rates. So it's similar like the Sweden, how like in Sweden, the divorce rates are higher, but it's because the marriage rates are higher. Right. So it's just more people that are married, but it doesn't necessarily indicate whether or not, what are your chances of getting divorced? Because also what are we looking for when we're looking for divorce rates? I think what we're trying to say is like, what is my chance of my marriage lasting, right? If I get divorced or if I get married. But what they're finding is that like, that's the things that tend to give you some information on whether or not your marriage might make it or not are actually like things that are kind of like economical, like economic stuff. So it's true that I think that they are finding that the millennial divorce rates are a little lower, but the millennial marriage rates are much lower. Right. We're just not getting married at the same rates. Right. But they were saying then who is getting married? And what they're finding is a little bit older people, like, so they're not getting married at 18 as much, but also it's mostly college educated people who also already have a tendency to stay in their marriage versus get a divorce. And so there's becoming this big like economic divide where already like people of lower income are not getting married as much as frequently, but also their chances of divorce are higher. And one of the reasons why they're saying that might be the case is that people who are college educated don't get married for financial reasons. People that are college educated tend to like have their own jobs and have their own financial income and tend to have better jobs so that they can make more money individually, so they don't need each other as much. Whereas in lower income families, one of the reasons why people do get married is so they can pool their income. But that puts a lot of pressure on the marriage. So that kind of pressure can lead to divorce. So I don't know, like, I guess it depends on how much you think marriage is an important thing to be in. But is it alarming that there's like a divide there? I guess yes, because it's becoming an elite, like it's an elitist thing to get married nowadays versus the way it used to be, which was more like everybody got married and it was more of a necessity. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of all that either. I think that the issue there would just be that like if you need the support from each other more, then it's a huge shame that divorce is happening at higher rates. For financial reasons, Well,
I kept reading that millennials are making smarter choices, making smarter marriages. I'm like, what does that really mean? But I guess
I think it depends. I mean, I think that article's talking about like college educated people.
That's what
So that's like a very myopic view of millennials.
Right.
I mean, there was one video that popped up right away when I was like trying to find information that was just like the cause of divorce is feminism. And I was like, I mean, like, I don't think that's true, but I think that there's the part that's true in that is just that women are more independent than they've ever been in some ways. Some women.
Well, at my workout group this morning, a friend of mine posted a picture of like the deed of their house that they just bought or something, and it said unmarried woman.
Yeah.
Does it do that on a man's deed to house? Like when you buy a house by yourself?
Actually, I wonder. That's a great question.
Unmarried man? I don't think it does.
I don't think it does either, but that's...
Yeah. But she posted it to be like, I am a badass woman. I bought this house myself, but it clearly states her name and then under it, unmarried woman.
Yeah.
In Tennessee. So,
I mean, maybe it's like that in New York too. I don't know.
I don't know if it's a national thing, but
yeah. But I think that that's also part of the whole like thing with marriage and divorce rates and blah, blah, blah with millennials is that like millennials generally don't value marriage in the same way. And I say value because not that it's, because the question is it as valuable as they've been trying to tell us this whole time, And I think that people are finding that maybe not, maybe it's not a necessity for a lot of people.
Yeah, in some ways I feel like we've been duped a little bit.
Sure.
But I still, I still love the idea of finding my partner, and that I love them so much that we do want to make a commitment in front of witnesses and stuff. So
yeah,
that's just where I'm at too. But
yeah, there's a great, if anybody's interested in marriage and not marriage and whether they get married and what the deal is with marriage, Elizabeth Gilbert wrote this great book called Marriage. I think it was just called Marriage. That was just really well researched in terms of like she was kind of very against marriage and was finding that she had to get married for like her husband was not an American citizen, and they kind of were feeling pressure to get married to make him a citizen, and she really didn't want to because that was sort of marriage was sort of against her whole like way she lived her life. So she decided to kind of like research it. And one of the things that she found that I think is also true, and we see this like in Edinburgh and stuff when we were walking through these old towns, is that, yeah, we like to think that like marriage back in the day was always a marriage of convenience. Like, oh, I'll trade my 3 sheep for your daughter or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that was sort of what we think about it. But there's always been marriage for love. It's always existed. And even like, and the fact that like Romeo and Juliet was written is in like 14 whatever. Right. The idea there is it's like it was a forbidden love. I mean, love has always existed, and so even amongst the reasons to get married in terms of being like practical reasons, there's always been marriages of love. So I think that like there is something in us as a species that is interested in bonding. Like, not everybody wants it, and it's not for everybody, but there's something in many of us that want to be bonded like that and want to be tied together out of love, And because I also like, I want to get married.
Yeah.
And after all this, yeah, it's not like, I don't think it's like, I'll just die of sadness if I never get married, but that's something I would like to have in my life. But you made a good point earlier too about what is a failure and what is a success in a marriage, because the average length of a marriage in the United States is 20 years. The median
I didn't
age.
know that. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
20 years. Could you imagine? My longest relationship was 4 years, maybe? What's yours?
Yeah. Like 4.
Yeah.
My parents are divorced, and their marriage was 20 years. And now my mom's second marriage is also 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's a long time. That my mom been married for 40 years total.
Right.
Which is nuts.
My mom's divorced. She was divorced before she met my father. And she's in the camp of your second marriage is the best.
I mean, my parents always, that's one thing that's funny to me too, is my parents, both of them said, they had a very amicable divorce, but they always, both of them were always, my grandparents were divorced too. They always said the same thing, like your second marriage is the winner. So my dad would be like, you better get married soon so you can get to your second marriage.
I know.
Like,
this one TED Talk, the woman said, marry your second husband first. It's like, right, okay, well, a girl can dream.
But I think that the waiting is what is that is the second marriage. Like the fact that people are getting married later in our generation is because back in the day, their first marriage was happening when they were 20. And the second marriage was happening when they were 30 or what have you.
Right.
Now it's like nobody's doing that 20, not nobody. There's not as many of these 20-year-old getting married at 20. It's more that number is definitely going up. We know that for sure. That the age of, it's like the average age of marriage, even 10 years ago, I think was something like 23 or 24. And now it's like 28 or something like that. So it's already going up. Which they do say that is potentially an indicator of a longer lasting marriage. So like waiting. Yeah.
Right. Look at us. Would you?
So if you get married at 50, does that mean like it's going to be just peas and carrots easy?
I would say so. No.
Sure. Why not?
What are your thoughts on a prenup?
Get it.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I was the one that had way less stuff, I'd be like, let's do a prenup. I just don't want to. I know enough people that have had horrifying divorces. because there was no prenup and there was no like clear indication of like, this is what you get, this is what I get. Because that's the thing about divorce too. It's like, if everybody's kind of on the same page, it's always painful because it's sad, and it's like it's a separation that can be sad to some degree, unless you really hate each other and you're like, get me out of this. And then it's also a celebration of freedom and all that. But it can go smoothly, or it can just go way bad.
Well, it's the assets. The splitting of the assets it can get. I mean, and children are part of the assets, and that's where it's like so.
And honestly, sometimes one partner wants to be married more than another. So then that's hard too.
Right.
But maybe that's another reason not to get married. Just don't have to deal with the divorce.
Yeah. I have a really good friend who I, really did help her get through a divorce, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking because, it was a couple that I was at their wedding, and they were the couple I aspired to be like and all that sort of stuff. And whenever we still, it's been years now since she's been divorced. But it's like, for me, I always remind her that she did have this great love, and you can have great loves throughout your life, but just to really like understand that for 10 years that she was with this partner, it kind of crumbled and burned in the end, but she had this great love, and it really is a celebration, and it really should be like, instead of like, oh, this thing failed, I think it really should be a celebration of 10 years of love. So anyone who has gone through a divorce or whatever, like, I think it's like such a great thing.
Also, it is a success.
Yes.
When you make a choice to take care of yourself in a situation. And I don't mean that in like a selfish way, but it's like, if you're in a marriage that's extremely unhappy and things are not going well, we should be celebrating when somebody or two people or whatever decide, we are not taking care of ourselves very well in this situation. And for what? You know what I mean? Like, if it really isn't going to work out, then it can also be a success to get divorced and to acknowledge like, hey, this is self-care, right? Too, to be like, this isn't working and we're just trudging along through this thing for what? Because society tells us we should stick it out, or,
Oh, it is.
Especially when you've really done the work. I mean, that's the thing, is I really do think that you should do the work before you unless both people are like, let's just call it quits. It's like, okay. But like, with my parents too, it's like they probably should have gotten divorced much sooner. But especially at that time, I think my mom they both felt so much pressure to stay together because divorce equaled failure.
Right.
And we just got to get rid of that. Also, like, divorce is a wonderful, thank God we have divorce.
Right.
Because like, aside from like the obvious sort of like when people are physically abusive and things like that, or mentally abusive or what have you, like, aside from those things, just like regular, just growing apart stuff, why should you only live on this earth once, as far as we know. So why would you spend years and years and years of your life miserable?
Right. Just
why
because
would you
society tells you that.
And the people that do that, they always make the people around them miserable too. It's not good for kids.
I'm sure everybody out there listening has that one couple friend that they should not be together anymore.
No, and they make other people uncomfortable and miserable, but especially for the kids. And people constantly, as a child of divorce, I hear all these goddamn this bullshit about how like you have to keep the family unit together. Sometimes that's not the best option. It really is not the best option for everybody. And it is way more traumatizing for children to stay in a situation where the parents are quote unquote together, but are just miserable because maybe there's fighting, or maybe it's just, the person, they're still married, but one of the parents is just fully unavailable, emotionally or even physically just not around. Just because they didn't get a divorce doesn't mean the marriage is okay. So like, we gotta, like, that makes me so angry, because then to me, that when I think of that, I think of like these church people that are trying to judge you for God won't like your divorce. It's like, God wants me to get divorced. And God is like, you guys, you tried it out, but this isn't not working.
Right.
And you're making, maybe you should get a divorce. God was the one that put it in your head in the first place. So, I guess they'd say that was the devil. But
I have
Same thing.
a married couple friend that they actually do go to marriage counseling or couples therapy twice a month. And it's not because they're having problems. It's just, it's very, very healthy to have these tools to communicate to each other. They hit a little roadblock a couple years ago in communicating. And so they started going to couples therapy, and now they love it because now they have the proper tools to communicate to one another. And now they're like, they've fallen in love all over again. And like everything is great.
That.
But it's like, you just have to get help if you need it.
Totally. And I think that I think 100% of marriages do need help at some point. Like, that's the other thing is I think that some people go into marriage thinking like, oh, we're so in love, it's going to be easy. I think every couple I've ever met, even the ones where I'm like, oh my God, you guys are so in love and everything looks perfect and this is what I want. I mean, 90% of the time when I say that, they're like, well, you don't know about those 2 years we went through, that really, we weren't sure we were going to make it. I think that's like that is what long-term relationship is you have to want to be in that relationship and you have to want to fight for it. So I'm not advocating people also just walk out on their marriages. It's not that. But if you're going to get into it, that's one thing too. It's like, I don't want to be, and this happens too in this society we live in where people I'd say women, but maybe I don't want to just say women. People kind of like, pressure their partner to get married. And it's like, I don't want to pressure anybody to get married. If you don't want to marry me, let's not do it. Because if you're not sure, it's not going to get easier.
Right.
It's not going to get better.
Right.
The best part is when you get married because that's when you're supposed to be the most in love, right? Or the most blinded by love. So you really, for me, I think when I think, well, then why the hell would I want to get married? For me, it's really having a partner in this life to share things with. But that does not mean that I think it's going to be perfect all the time.
Right.
And that's why I love the idea of maybe going into therapy as a preemptive measure. Be like, we're going to get married and now we're going to start scheduling our therapy appointments to make sure that we are communicating well this whole way through. I love that idea.
Well, I know my church here, not that I go to church, but the church I was raised in here, if you are going to get married in the walls of their church, you have to go to 3 or 4, marriage counseling sessions with the minister before you get married.
Yeah, at my old church, I think in a lot of churches they do that. Because I think part of it for churches, and I think this is good on them too, it's like they just don't want you to even go down that path if you're going to, they don't want you to get divorced. So they don't want to be participating in anything that doesn't seem good. But I guess the question is, what happens, I mean, is it that then the church is like, we're not going to marry you?
I know, right?
This is not good.
You
I don't
guys
know
really
how that ends. I don't know how that ends. But
I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe the hope is just that the couples themselves see the cracks and then either decide to stay or not stay. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. We had this conversation before. So we have a joint checking account, Katy and I, for the band.
Yeah.
But I remember once you said that you wouldn't with your partner when you get married.
No, absolutely not. I would. And this is my elitism showing because that's not always feasible in other families. I think that the most I would do is have a joint account, but then we would both have our separate accounts, and then we'd have to come up with a system of how we put money into the joint account. But I would never personally mesh all my money together. That's not how my parents did it. So that's probably why they always had their own accounts, and then I think they had a joint one that they would do vacations from or something like that. Would you like to have a full joint account with your
smash
partner?
it all together? Let's get messy.
Smush it together so that you can't. He's like, now you'll never leave me.
Now you'll never leave me. Yeah. I mean, my parents have always had a joint account, and then it's just been fascinating because my dad has always managed the money until the last 10 years. My mom has kind of taken over because of his Alzheimer's, and so it's just been interesting talking to her about how very important it is that both partners are aware of the finances. Because why would you just have the man do it? I mean, seriously, I think my mom,
or even just the woman do it. I mean,
or just one partner. I think both. If it's both partners' money, then have full disclosure. And not that my dad was keeping things secret and stuff, but he was just my mom just let him do his thing. And then like 10 years ago, she was like, wait a minute, what's happening?
Right.
So,
well, I think also like one of the reasons why I'm so pro having separate accounts and then maybe a joint account for joint things is that like then, I mean, one of the things that people fight about the most is finances.
right.
So it's like if my partner wants to go out and buy a motorcycle or something, I don't want that money. Then I want him to be able to have that kind of independence. Where I'm like, if that's what you want to get a motorcycle, you go for it. I'm not going to, because otherwise, like, I'd be like, why are you spending $4,000 on a motorcycle or whatever? You know what I mean? I don't want to have to be in that position. I want them to make those choices for themselves.
Fighting with a partner about finances.
But I'll tell them, if you blow through all your money, I'm not going to help you.
Right.
Like, you can't touch like, I'm going to shut down our bank, our joint account or whatever.
clear it
You
out.
got to figure that out. Yeah.
Go to
you got to
Hawaii.
figure that out. Because I'm not going to mess around. Like, that, I think that's my thing, too, is it's like, when people hit hard times, I'm very, very pro helping each other out.
Right.
That was the thing my parents also did, was that when one of them was in grad school and the other one was like then making all the money, and then they switched. And they were very honest about it, and then they took care of each other through that thing. And I'm very pro that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
But also, that's me. Like, I
Right.
also know I'm a person that likes to work, that wants to work. There's some women that, and dads that want to be stay-at-home dads and don't want to work. So then the other partner brings home the money. And now, if that works for them,
Right.
that's great. I love that. It's not for me.
Child
but I
care
love
is so expensive. It's crazy.
Yeah. Although
It's crazy.
I honestly too, if I was in a position where I was making more money and my partner wanted to stay home with the kids, actually maybe I'd be okay with that too.
Yeah,
You know what I
that'd
mean?
be
Like
amazing.
I wouldn't be mad at that. So I think that there's depending on the partnership and the couple and the individuals, there's so many different ways to do it. But
Right.
offhand, that would be my feeling about it.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Marriage, we call it this one thing, but it's not one thing.
Right.
And then we have open marriages and we have polyamorous marriages and there's just so many ways it can be. We have marriages of convenience. We have marriages where the partners don't even live in the same house. I mean, like there was a woman that I knew that was her husband lived in a different apartment.
See,
But they were
Mm.
very in love. It wasn't because they didn't want to be. It was just like we need our own space.
Right.
We're both kind of introverts and we don't want to be on top of each other because then we'll get a divorce.
Well, that's what I've always clung to with Tim Burton and Helena Bonham Carter. I mean, they've divorced now since, but when they were happily married, they had this big house and she had like the east wing and he had the west wing. And I was like, that is so cool. I've always thought that it'd be great to have 2 bedrooms or maybe 3, like it's like 3 bedrooms. We have the sex chamber and then
Sure. Well,
our
also
sleepy
that,
time
like,
places.
yeah, and I know people too that sort of have that setup where it's like most of the nights they sleep in the same bed, but then if somebody has to wake up early or someone has
love
trouble
that.
sleeping or you know what I mean, you just have to get real about what it is to live together.
Yeah,
You
I'm
shouldn't
sorry.
just
If
do
I
stuff.
marry somebody who snores, like we're getting
Get
you
the
another
out of my bed.
Yeah, get out. Get out.
We're gonna put one of those little plasticky things on your nose or whatever. What is that?
I think the biggest thing is that like let's just move away from this super traditional what marriage looks like now. Like let's just
I mean, yeah, I think that that's also a thing that gets me riled up about these people that are so like freaking out about divorce rates is those are the same people that are saying that women should stay at home and cook and clean and be barefoot and pregnant,
Right.
and obey their husbands. I mean, that shit
Right.
is old.
Right.
The obeying anybody. Nobody should be obeying anybody. You should be communicating,
Right.
and you should be on the same page, and you should be a marriage should just be like overflowing with mutual respect,
right. But the
You know?
obeying, are you
But
kidding?
obeying is like, get out of my face with that word. No.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I'm certainly not doing those Christian marriage vows. That's
No.
for sure.
I like I like for better or worse.
Till
And then-
death do us
And so,
part.
yeah, maybe not till death do us part, but for better or worse, while we're in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like when
Right.
we're in it, you know,
Right.
and we'll try. And then if we decide no, then okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would go as far as to talk about divorce at my wedding, like you'd like to do. But
I'm gonna turn to the audience or the and be like, but we
hold us accountable. Like if this isn't working, just come on over and be like, girl, boy, you gotta get divorced.
I got a divorce lawyer on speed dial.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
That's probably not. Yeah, you gotta just lean
so
into being
romantic.
positive. Yeah, good point. But
Well,
I'll
you shouldn't
whisper
go
in his
into
ear.
marriage. Yeah, and you probably shouldn't go into marriage planning on getting divorced. There was like, I like to read those like stupid BuzzFeed lists where I guess they just collect comments from Reddit, and then they ask questions like, how did you know this couple was going to get divorced? And apparently one of them was the bride during her wedding kept saying like, in my next wedding I'm going to do this. In my next, and they were like, yeah, and they got divorced.
And they got divorced, right?
So you know that's like a bad sign. At my next wedding,
Or the bridesmaid saying, well, he'll make a great first husband.
Yeah.
At Margot's wedding, my little sisters, I did give the speech at the reception, and I did start saying, this is actually Margot's second marriage, and everyone was like, what? And I was like, we got married when we were children.
I honestly think I told a similar speech at my best friend's wedding,
right?
Because we also had gotten married as children.
Yeah, I was the groom. It was my older sister was the minister. It was beautiful, beautiful ceremony. I love it. I do love weddings. I have a wedding I'm going to in a week.
I love weddings.
Now
too.
that the
It's
world
so
is opening up, I can't wait. And so many of these weddings last year were postponed, and so this is a rescheduled wedding where it's going to be fire.
Nice.
Anyway,
well, so I guess we don't know.
We don't know. Again, like, don't come at us saying.
No, we don't know. You look it up. It's not easy to figure out. Nobody really. And the truth is, nobody knows. That's what they everything I ended up reading that was actually sort of a reliable source was like, no, we don't really know.
Right.
We make some guesses.
But if anything, it's a success. If you get divorced, celebrate the love that you've had for however long you were married.
And the other question is, who cares? What the rate is? Does it matter? Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
It doesn't matter. If you're happy and you're living your life,
that's right.
You do you.
You do you, boo.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys, so much for listening. Rate and review us. That helps us and our algorithm.
Just continue to send us circumcision emails.
Yeah,
till
please.
We die.
That's so fun.
That's all we want. No. And if you have thoughts about divorce and marriage, please send it over.
Yeah. All right.
In an email form. All right.
Toodles.
Bye.